Good morning, Professor.
Hi, Anna. Morning. So, okay. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. If you're here, please turn on your cameras. Please see Green, Julian, and Sam, Fernando, Jackie. Yeah.
Professor, I have a question before we start.
Sure, Fernando.
Are we ever going to do in-person classes this semester?
I know it doesn't look like it because so I'm sure you've seen the announcement, but since we have 4 weeks and many students actually made throughout the semester made different plans. Some of you have traveled and we've got some part-time jobs and whatnot. So I won't bother just to attend for 3 weeks, then go back to final exams. So yeah, it's not from my perspective, it's not worth it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So, welcome back, everyone. Glad to see you again in good shape and in good health. So let me share the screen. Cool. All right. So today we're going to talk about continue to talk about quantitative research, and we're going to focus on measurements. But before we do that, I have a quick announcement. So as you know, you've read the rubric that, or the syllabus, that there is like a final group assignment for this class, like a group project. And a sign-up sheet is already uploaded to the course content. So if you go to Blackboard's course content and then go all the way to the bottom, you would see a link and it would take you to like a sign-up sheet or like self-enroll groups. You can go there and enroll in any group. So basically, if, for example, two people or two students that you want to enroll with, just arrange so you all sign up for one group. And so I set up the system so you could enroll yourself, right? Like you can withdraw as well. So that's there. Also, the assignment sheet is already uploaded as well, which I'm going to go over on Friday. So I'm going to have some dedicated time to talk about the group assignment. But if you want to start reading it before Friday, that would be super helpful. And so you can come up with questions and so some clarifications about the group assignment. If you have specific preferences, then you didn't know how to sign up for a group with your friends, let me know. Like send me like your name and the names of the people you like to work with, and I could set you up in one group. Or if you have some reservations, and so you could, and this happened before, so you could, for example, not have specific people you want to work with, but you have specific people you did not want to work with. So you're okay with anyone except one or two individuals for whatever reasons, like sometimes there are personal reasons or like had bad experience. Anyhow, I'm not, I won't go into details, but also let me know if you have specific preferences. Otherwise, if you haven't, so by the end of the week, if you haven't assigned yourself to any group, I will randomly assign you to whichever spots that are left. All right. Do you have questions about this particular part about
Well,
groups?
Professor, where exactly do we enroll for the group on the Blackboard?
Do you see course content? It should be.
Yeah.
You don't see like groups or like my groups. It should be named my groups.
It's at the very bottom. You have to scroll down.
Yeah.
Oh,
all the way
okay.
down.
Yeah. I just found it. Thank you.
Let me know if there's like any technical difficulties with stuff.
So, Professor, I had a quick question for you. So, for these groups, like I'm looking at it right now, and like it doesn't really necessarily define like what group is doing what. Will you be assigning like the actual rubric and stuff like that, or is everybody going to be researching the same thing?
Yeah, so I'll explain what the actual project is, but it's basically, yeah, you're going to come up with a research idea or research proposal, right?
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, and so the assignment sheet is already also uploaded to the course content. You should be able to see it, and I'm going to go over it on Friday.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so that's like as far as the announcement goes. So like right now, I'm going to do like a bit of a recap of what we learned about quantitative research before we went into spring break, which was for long. And so we said like the idea of having quantitative research is that you don't only want to explore things, you want to test associations, right? Like you want to falsify certain hypotheses. And we say that the purpose of quantitative research is that it can allow you to measure the variables within hypotheses or like inside hypotheses in order to find associations, right? So it's like, for example, longer workout hours translate into more pounds to lose in weight, right? Like so that's like a numerical associations. Like if we take an example from communication, that's like exposure to violent video games or like playing violent video games translate into aggressive thoughts, attitudes, or behavior, right? And so the idea of then quantitative research is that we want to look, since we want to measure things, we want to have consistent, precise, and accurate measurements. So how accurately can we measure aggressiveness? How accurately can we measure body dissatisfaction? How accurately we can measure self-esteem? Those type of things. So because we do testing and we want to establish some parameters, those variables need to be consistent in terms of who measure it. So it's not based on impressions or like individual or subjective experience, as we saw with qualitative research, but it's based on established measures. And the problem is, we say that especially in like so in social sciences, including communication, that the variables we study are not directly observed, and they don't have like a tangible or like a concrete presence. So they're not things like workout hours or gravity or heat or like electrical waves, electromagnetic waves. We talk about things like satisfaction, dissatisfaction, enjoyment, self-esteem, those type of things, body image, right? And those are not tangible things that we could measure with like a specific, I don't know, like a roller or like a scale, like an actual scale. We have to then say, okay, we said like we have to define what we mean by those things very specifically. So that's what we said, conceptual definitions, right? So as we say, depression cannot mean one thing for Anna and different thing for Aziz and a third thing for Fernando. We should, as communication scholars, social science scholars, agree on what we're talking about when we talk about depression, for example, or enjoyment. And then for the precise measurement and consistent measurement, we said then you come up with criteria to say how exactly you're going to measure it. And so that's like what we call the operational definition. So if you've done the quiz before, like in the last lecture, we talked about something like ad intrusiveness, right? So what make an ad intrusive? So we told like come up with 4 things that will describe what an intrusive as, like 4 statements. So I felt that ad was invasive. I felt that ad was annoying. I felt that ad disturbed my activity. And so those 3 things like annoyance, disturbance, and invasiveness would then constitute ad intrusiveness. This is just made up examples, by the way. And so, yeah, and we have those measurements. The reason in communication and in social science in general, we have those measurements, you would see what they call scales. We have to have them standardized, right? So the operational definition, we said, will become standardized scale or standardized measurement. And the objective of that is to achieve consistency in one study and within study and among studies, right? That consistency, if we measure, for example, like violent video games effects on aggressive thoughts, we have to have a consistent scale for aggressiveness such that we could make different studies comparable. So it's not that based on, again, the impression of what is aggressive and what is not, but at least we have some scale that we all use as scholars. And so we could compare the outcomes in different results, right? Those scales ought to be exhaustive and coherent and to achieve accuracy and precision, right? So they won't only measure one part of the variable you're going to talk about, or they're not going to, and they're not going to measure 2 different things. You want to measure one specific variables, but cover all the aspects or all the dimension of that variable. And that's something we're going to talk about later this week and next week. So to refresh your memory, so we said that's like when you develop a quantitative research idea, you start with the theory or problem identification. So you just have a general idea of what you're studying, just as some basic notion. And then you would develop a theory or theoretical definition, and we call that conceptualization or conceptual definition. We have something, for example, that's called parasocial relationships, right? If you remember from last class. And so vaguely it was, okay, the thing that people feel towards characters they see on TV. And then you take that onto another level and say, okay, the exact definition is the level of attachment viewers make towards like characters they see, their favorite characters they see, or like on the media. So now here, like you have some conceptual definition that like it's sort of an emotional attachment. And then they took it also to another level and operationalize it. So how we're going to measure that? So it's basically saying the criteria for parasocial relationship would be I feel sad when that character is hurt, or like I feel joy when they appear on the screen, or like I feel my thoughts are similar to their thoughts, or like I identify with their problems, those type of things. So they gave exact statements to explain the conceptual definition. And finally, the last stage is to quantify those statements. And that's what we call measurement. Because again, remember, it's a quantitative research. So those statements cannot just be checked as like themes, as we saw in qualitative research, but then you would attach specific numbers to them in order to be measured. Right? So today, we're going to cover that for the measurement part. We already talked about the quantitative measurements when we covered quantitative content analysis. So remember, content analysis can be quantitative or qualitative, but quantitative content analysis is well, like such percentage of the content was belong to that category, and this percentage belong to that category. We already covered that, but those, like for the remainder of the semester, we're going to talk about quantitative measurements in survey research and in experimental research, right? Which are based on both surveys and experiments based on having questionnaires, right? So researcher would propose a questionnaire with specific questions, and those questions have numerical values, and based on the results of those questionnaire, you will make the analysis. Okay. So how many of you have heard this phrase before, questionnaire? You know what a questionnaire is, right? Yeah. So Julian, what is a questionnaire?
It's just like a basic guide for like asking like questions on like a certain topic.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically a list of questions with guidance, like how you're going to answer those questions, right? So it's something like you get in a survey. That's like the questions themselves are called the questionnaire. So a questionnaire is a list of questions, and each question in research we call an item. It's just like so each question you have in a question is called an item. Those items, or each item, is meant to measure something. They're either going to measure a variable or like one aspect of a variable. So for instance, when I ask about gender, so please indicate your gender, male, female, or other, that's one variable, which is like gender identity. So that's variable. I ask you about what school you go to, that's another variable. Right? Or it could measure part of a variable. So I ask you how about satisfaction with remote learning. I can have 5 items relate to satisfaction with remote learning. So are you satisfied with the quality of the courses? Are you satisfied with the engagement of the instructor? Are you satisfied about the ability to communicate? So each item is measuring one aspect or one dimension of the variable we're calling satisfaction with remote learning, right? So that's basically what questionnaire is. Those collection of items that measure one variable, when they are standardized, they would be called a scale. That's the word you would hear me say a lot. So a scale to measure something, a scale to measure something. And it doesn't mean a physical scale, but it means, in our context, it means, yeah, that list of questions that's been standardized, and researchers from different fields and backgrounds would use it. So there is a scale for self-body image. There's a scale for self-esteem. There's a scale for motivation to exercise. There is a scale for engagement with a movie. Those means are like a standardized item, and that scale is meant to measure that variable that has been already defined conceptually and operationally, right? And we say it again, like those are quantifiable to ensure consistency and replicability. So Grant could use it, I could use it, Hannah could use it, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what replicability means. Like it can be replicated in a different study or different studies. Now about the quantification part, how do we quantify them? Like, so there are different types of measurement with different values, and it fits basically whatever you want to measure. So it relates to the nature of the variable itself. So the different ways to categorize them, but basically you have three types of scales in measurement, and one of them could be divided into two. So, but basically there are three. At least that's how I see it. The first one is what we call a nominal scale. Does anyone know what the word nominal mean? Just in general, what do you mean by nominal? Santi, do you know what nominal mean?
I don't know what they mean, but I can probably make an assumption just out of the word. Nominal, I guess, comes from numbers instead of like an order, which would be ordinal, I guess.
Nominal doesn't come from, nominal comes from, what's another word that starts with an N? N-A-M.
Name.
Yeah. So nominal means in name only. That's what basically.
And then
basically
ordinal
means.
is numbers.
Order is, Order,
Okay.
like, you have, okay.
Okay.
So nominal, okay, so you got this one, okay. So nominal means the numbers don't mean anything, it's just nominal, okay? So for example, you get in a survey and you say pick your gender, so it's 1 for male, 2 for female, and 3 for other. That doesn't mean males come before females. Or like 1 female is equal to 2 males because it's 2 and that is 1. It's just nominal, just made up, arbitrary. There's no value whatsoever attached to the actual number. So those numbers is just made as a matter of convenience and organization, right? So I don't type in the full thing. So, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 categories and I have to assign a name to each category to whichever number. Right? So similarly, when you're doing the group assignments, so group 1 doesn't mean that the group that got the first place, or group 7 is not the mean that's the last group. It's just conventional, right? So that we mean by nominal. It can be in binary, it can have multiple categories. So nominal would cover things like, like gender, like in which you don't have. Ordinal, on the other hand, is when you have an order or ranking. Okay, so you have a ranking, but those ranking don't have, and this could be confusing, but don't have mathematical values. All right. So there's some order, but also the numbers don't have actual mathematical values in the sense that if you can calculate the distance between them. And I'm going to give you an example. So let's see, we should ask someone here. Let's say, okay, someone. Caroline, are you here? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Kelly, are you here? Okay, so missing some people. Okay, so Jacqueline, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So imagine we are in a race, okay? So you come in the first place, I came in the second place, and let's say Ricardo came in the third place, all right? From that order, can we say what's the difference, what the difference was between each one of us?
No.
So in terms of like
No.
the time we finished or the distance? Yeah. So that's, but we know like who won, right?
Yes.
And we know who comes second. So that's exactly the same. So ordinal is like when you are in a race, or think like college year or economic class. So we know, for example, like Jacqueline came first, Aziz second, Ricardo third. But the distance between Aziz and Ricardo could be way, way more than the distance between Aziz and Jacqueline. So I could finish like only 1 second behind Jacqueline, but 10 seconds like up in front of Ricardo. The ordinal level measurements don't give you like a specific, like actual mathematical distances. So, right, so the difference between 1 and 3 is like 2, and between 3 and 4 is 1, and between 4 and 8 is 4, right? But that doesn't apply to ordinal. So continuous, on the other hand, that's when the numbers reflect an order and they reflect an actual mathematical distances, right? So grades, for example, if I get 100 in an exam and you got 98, yes, so the difference between us is exactly 2 points. So we know that, right? Like in basketball match scores, you get 100 to 96. That's also, so the difference was exactly 4 points. We could tell like what the distance was, salaries or money, height, weight, everything that can continuously be measured, right? So you move from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, and those distances are all equal. We call that a continuous scale, right? As opposed to ordinal scale, in which it has an order, but no actual mathematical differences, okay? So here, for example, like this is an example of a nominal question. What's the mobile app that you use the most during the day? So Uber, Google Maps, Snapchat, Instagram, etc. So this is, yeah, like a nominal, just whatever you prefer, but it doesn't mean we prefer, doesn't mean Uber is actually ranked before Google Map, or that 4, which is Instagram, is double the size of Google Map because it's 2. So yeah, it's just nominal. Ordinal scale, like if you, for example, the spiciness level in a sauce. So if you would, so for example, like assume this is a question, if you order chicken wings, what's the spiciness level you prefer? Mild, medium, hot, extra hot, or extremely hot? So this would be considered ordinal, okay? Can anyone tell us why would we consider this ordinal and not continuous?
Because it's ranked in order and range.
But it's ranked in order, but, so that would make it ordinal. But why it is not continuous?
Is it because somebody could think something's hot, but another person could think something's mild?
That's a good one. That's true. It's a good one. But let me ask you like specific question, Rand. Do you know what's the difference between mild and medium in here?
Personally, I would think mild would be like barely anything. Medium would be, you would kind of feel it a little bit.
And what about the difference between medium and hot?
Medium, again, you'd feel a little bit. Hot would be, it would be almost hard to keep eating.
Is
Okay.
it because there's no equal distance from each other?
Yeah. So like what Brand was saying, this didn't tell us what exactly the spiciness added when you go up each level, right? So if you have something like, there is, by the way, a scale to like a scientific one to measure spiciness. What is it? The Scoville. Don't call me on this one. Yeah, so I'm right. Yeah. So that one is actually like it's numerical. So like a 200 level is double 100 level, and then you have like 1000, that's 10 times more than 100, etc. So that's a numerical one that is continuous. Here, we don't know if the difference between mild to medium is the same as from medium to hot, right? So here, do they double the spiciness or like just add a little bit, and then they double when it's hot, and then they add a little bit and it's from hot to extra hot, and then too many like triple when it comes to extreme hot? We don't know. So we cannot establish like equal distances. So when you go from like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that doesn't mean 4 is twice as hot as 2. Exactly. Right? It is more hot, but we don't know if it's twice as hot or like a little bit more hot. Okay. Yeah. So there's some subjectivity involved in here. Here's another example. Like this is a continuous scale. How concerned are you about catching COVID-19 virus on a scale of 1 to 5? And I made a mistake, so 0 not worried at all. So it should be a scale of 0 to 5. But anyhow, ignore that. So 0 not worried at all, or like 1 not worried, and 5 is very worried. So this is continuous because it's related to what we were just discussing. Why would we consider this continuous and not ordinal?
Because there's a equal, like there's a scale, there's an equal amount of numbers
Yeah.
in between each other.
Yeah. So you hear like I gave you like some borders, and so yeah, like 4 would be twice as worried as 2, or at least they perceive themselves as twice as worried as 2, and 5 perceives it like at the maximum worriedness. So we can actually make numerical calculations based on the distances in here. So yeah, just a quick thing. So the both ordinal and nominal sometimes would be referred to as categorical collectively, for that reason that they don't have numerical values. So it's a way to just categorize different criteria or categories, hence the name. But they can be ordered or not ordered, but they are not numerical in nature. We are assigned number to them, just as I said, as a matter of convenience and ranking, but they are not numerical in a mathematical sense, right? That you go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And continuous are called numerical scales. So that's what you remember, right? Like the values can be measured and they have a real mathematical difference between them. Then the continuous scales could be further divided into 2 things. And this is mostly technical though. Something we call interval scale, and the other what we would call ratio scales. And those are things basically that we have transformed to have a standardized difference, but they have a set number or discrete number of options, and they don't have a real 0. I could add that. Sorry. There we go. Yeah. So in other words, so motivation or depression level or intention to work out or enjoyment of a game, those are things that by nature are not, again, they're not measurable. You cannot have a numerical thing stick into someone's under someone's tongue, and then you will get their motivation level. But we say, okay, let's have a scale in which you answer from 1 to 5 what your motivation level is. And so we sort of artificially created that numerical scale with equal distances between the values, but those scales don't have real zeros. And what we mean by that is that we cannot really measure, like, if with zero motivation, with zero depression, right? You cannot really have zero depression if you think of it, or like zero happiness or zero sadness, because zero is like the total absence of things, like consciously and unconsciously. And yeah, we cannot really say like what's the difference between a zero and like 0.01, right? So we would just set up like the lowest thing would be one, depending on how you feel. So that's to be one or even zero, but it's not a real zero, right? So example might be depression level, motivation, tension, and a Fahrenheit scale. Okay. Then we have what we call the ratio scale, that are values that have a true zero, or the absolute absence of a variable. And those are mostly tangible things. So like income, you can have zero income. As a matter of fact, you can have minus income. You can have zero height, which means you do not exist, right? If you don't have like a physical, like technically, although not physically, but technically you can have zero height. You can have zero age if you're unborn. There's also the Kelvin scale. Have you heard of the Kelvin scale? Maybe in high school, took science classes, geology. No one heard of the Kelvin scale.
Yeah, it's like very sciencey. Like it's not like what we usually use. It has like an absolute zero to it.
Yeah, and what does that mean? What is an absolute zero?
I don't really understand it fully, but it's like I don't know.
Okay, so absolute zero, that's a good one. So an absolute zero is the actual absolute absence of heat, like literally zero. And at that level, like every element in that table, like every element in nature would freeze, right? So you know what? So the element that take the that could withstand the lowest level of temperature is mercury, basically. And when mercury freezes, that's basically the absolute zero. That's the actual freezing point of everything in the known universe. We call that's called the Kelvin scale. So in that sense, the zero is an actual zero. It's very sciencey. We don't use it, and but there's no minus values because that's it. Zero is zero. You go beyond zero. How is it different than Fahrenheit scale then? Let me ask you a different question. What is zero in Fahrenheit? What's
33 or something like that? 34?
34 and what? 23 actually. You mean in Celsius?
Wait, isn't Fahrenheit like 30 something and Celsius is 0?
Right, yeah, that's okay, that's what I meant. But why is the 0 Celsius or the 0 Fahrenheit set up at whatever they are? What is 0 Celsius? What's the value or the uniqueness of 0 Celsius?
Isn't it freezing when water freezes?
Freezing,
and
yeah,
it's
when
like-
water freezes.
Yeah, when water freezes. But why did they pick water freezes? We're trying to say, couldn't they pick 0 at a different point?
They start to boil at 100 degrees though. So
Yeah. So it was, the reason is it's just convenient because you start from a 0, it freezes, that's the Celsius part, and then at 100 the water boils. So what's convenient? Like, okay, people love that. People who use the metric system like the idea, like, okay, go 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and at 100, there's something that happens, right? Fahrenheit, do you know why they set what 0 Fahrenheit is? It's, yeah, the idea. So it's totally arbitrary. So the guy, Fahrenheit, that was like the coldest thing in whatever town in Germany he was living, right? So when 0 Fahrenheit, that's like extremely cold, but there's no natural thing attached to that thing. There's no phenomenon that 0 Fahrenheit could predict. So it's totally arbitrary. That's my point. So the zeros in those scales are arbitrary. Like I could come up with a temperature scale, and whatever 100 Celsius is, that will be my 0. And then we go down from there. No one would use it, but it would still be accurate, right? Because the 0 here doesn't mean anything. It's just a made up 0, and then we go up or down. And so yeah, that's the point. So if the 0 is an actual 0 or not. So yeah, so another example of ratio within the last 2 months, how many hours have you spent online to attend and prepare to your classes? And then you tell like how many hours. Why this ratio again? You're muted, Julian. Okay, go ahead. Anyone?
It's a ratio because it's like hours to months. So you can do 0. You can
Yeah.
do no hours.
When you spend 0 hours, that's actually, yeah, you didn't spend any time. So yeah, 0 means 0 in here. Okay, so this is the last slide for today, and then we continue in like a follow-up video that I'm going to post. So here, which one of these two questions or items are continuous? The first one, which option best describe your Friday night plans? Stay in and study, stay in and chill, go out, go wild. That's pre-COVID question. Beach party and a movies night. That's the first question. The second question, how happy are you that tomorrow is Friday? Again, not the real, it's an example. And it ranges from extremely unhappy, mostly unhappy, somewhat unhappy, neither unhappy or happy, somewhat happy, mostly happy, very happy. So which one of these two questions is continuous?
The second one, Gray.
Yeah. Because you would see in like a range between extreme unhappiness to extreme happiness, and we go up like a level in each. All right, so that's it for this part. So I'm going also to add a video with a quiz. It should be like no more than like about 10 minutes. So please do that before Friday. And then yeah, we'll talk more about surveys, measurements, and group project. Do you have any questions? Right. So that's the case. And hope to see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Professor, I had a quick question for you. It was just in relation to trying to navigate through the group project, the content, because I joined a group, but I actually wanted to join a group with one of my friends, and it doesn't allow me to exit this group and then join another one for some reason.
Huh. Okay, so I'll kick you out.
Okay, yeah, because I sent you an email too during the class. It's just group 2. I'm in group 1, so yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you got my you probably did read my chat, but for some reason my activity 2 hasn't been graded yet, but like I'm not worried about it. But it's
Okay.
I submitted it on time.
You mean the content analysis exercise?
No, I think it was the tweet, whatever the one with the tweets was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It just says ungraded. I don't know because I remember it got mixed up in between like I know you wanted to add the tweet exercise as like as part of activity 2 and then whatever, but okay.
Yeah. If I graded the exercise, so that will be your grade for activity number 2.
Oh, the content, that's the content
Yeah.
analysis. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. Okay.
So,
Thank you so
don't
much. I
worry about it,
appreciate
yeah.
it.